What does a member of Congress actually do? What if we shadowed a member of Congress for a day or two? Did a day in the life of a member of Congress? We came down to Washington, D.C. to spend time shadowing Jake Auchincloss. I'd like to show you what a day in the life of a member of Congress is here in Washington, D.C.
It doesn't have to be that way. I think Americans accept that that's the status quo. They shouldn't.
Movement.
Let's be candid.
Rural people.
The outrage is because there were offshore wind farms off the coast of Scotland and the president's golf course. That's why he's mad about it. Congress is a contact sport.
You guys work harder than I thought, man.
Oh, that's good. I'm glad that story's getting told.
We spent a few days with Representative Auchincloss from June 9th to June 11th, the Monday to Wednesday after a weekend of protests and rioting in Los Angeles, and just a few days after an attack on a group of elderly Jews in Colorado. Those were the stories dominating the headlines when we drove to the airport with members of his staff to pick him up. You mind sitting in the back with me so we can chat? Okay, cool.
Here. Actually, I'll put it in the back because I have my pen and everything. I just shared you on the Substack.
Okay, I'll look at it. Do you mind?
You started a Substack. Welcome to the newsletter game.
I'm writing many fewer words than you are, and I'm expressly writing from a Democratic perspective, basically. Like, you know, we Americans know what we're against, but not what we're for. And so my aim is to take current events, but use them not as a foil for just criticizing Donald Trump, but actually saying, all right, here's what Democrats would do differently.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you're upset about violation of posse comitatus in LA, here's a reform agenda for the imperial presidency. Like, you're upset about tariffs, here's how we would do trade. So I'm trying to offer a proactive, positive agenda.
Tell me a little bit about, like, okay, so today we're picking you up from Reagan International Airport. Yep. It's Monday afternoon. This is like a pretty standard start to your week, getting in around this time on a Monday, and from the Boston area where your district is?
3 hours door to door.
3 hours door to door.
So only a few hours ago, I was in my daughter's preschool class, helping her present her poster about her, about herself. Yeah.
Nice. So what's this weekend look like for you? You're just like getting home, recharging, spending some time with some family, basically?
Very current events dependent. I really try to protect and prioritize bedtime and weekends because I got 3 kids, 5, 3, and 2, and there's no replacement for time spent with them, particularly at this age. So I work really hard to not step on evenings and weekends, but politics happens evenings and weekends.
Yeah.
So there's always hard trade-offs. My wife is a saint. This weekend, for example, I was able to pretty much spend the whole day on Saturday with the family, and then on Sunday I went to a gathering of the Jewish community in Newton. It was the same group, the chapter as part of that broader group that was attacked in Boulder, and so I spoke with them about anti-Semitism.
That happened on Sunday?
That happened on Sunday.
Got it.
And then I usually, like during nap time and evenings, we'll try to catch up on a lot of writing. A lot of my job is writing things or reading things that other people have written. And that is not conducive with 3 toddlers. So
yeah.
When they're sleeping is when I try to be reading or writing.
First things first on your menu today is hitting the gym. Rep Auchincloss straight to the gym. So a priority on physical, mental health, I presume. You're just like, that's part of your routine. You need to go blow off some steam before you get to work right away.
So I'm a morning person. So I get a lot of work done. I'm up at like 5:30, and I get a lot of work done in the mornings. And then I find that I kind of peter out in the afternoons, and the way that but I, especially here in Washington, I can't. I gotta be active in the afternoons and then into the evenings as well, because we try to maximize my evening time when I'm away from the kids already. And so the way I've found to prevent that is to do a workout instead of having lunch in the afternoon, and that gives me more energy in the afternoon.
Got it. All right. Obviously, Representative Auchincloss's team knew we were coming. Throughout the 72 hours we spent with him, he'd occasionally ask to go off the record or turn the cameras off or point to his microphone so a colleague knew that he was hot. He sometimes pulled staffers into a private room and wouldn't allow us in. But on the whole, this really did seem like a genuine look at what his life is like and how most of his weeks start with an airport pickup and a workout. So you're back from the gym. I think it's 2:20. You have a 2:30 meet. How much of like your standard day you're in here doing this, like Zoom meetings? Staff, I've noticed, kind of in and out. They're checking on how you're feeling about the final draft of your Substack post. Like that's like a pretty normal start to your day when you get here.
I would say my time in Washington is about a third. It's about a third of committee work, which is, I'm on energy and commerce, which is jurisdiction over health, social media, energy, and the environment. And we have a lot of markups, which are basically where we're actually debating the legislation that will make it onto the House floor. We've got hearings where we're bringing in experts to talk to them about various issues. And then I've got my sort of meetings or staff work ahead of those events. So being prepared on the legislation, understanding what things I want to advocate for. So that's about a third of my time is like the nuts and bolts of the lawmaking within the committee of jurisdiction I'm on. The other third of my time is, call it like Congress-wide engagement. So I'm going to the House floor to vote on issues, or I'm going to a caucus meeting for all the Democrats in Congress, or some kind of bigger event where Congress or some big subset of it is kind of engaging on an issue. And then the final third is meeting with district stakeholders, whether it's business or health and human services leaders or local and state officials that come in here. Sometimes people meet with my staff, sometimes I'll meet with them. And those those meetings can have to do with immediate legislation in front of us, or they can just be them raising issues. And it's part of how I keep, again, my finger on the pulse of the district.
At around 2:30 p.m. Eastern, Representative Auchincloss stepped into a Zoom meeting with Jewish leaders. Attendees, including Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who were on the call, were not comfortable having their video or audio recorded. So we're only going to show a couple brief clips from this meeting.
Obviously, combating anti-Semitism. We also wanted to note that today is day 612, that our hostages continue to be held in Gaza, and also to discuss the burgeoning and continuing threat of a nuclear Iran. But happy to have you steer the conversation as you would like.
I don't know if you've seen, but we had a letter go out signed by 46 organizations on the security request on the nonprofit security grant program. And we, in the letter, we asked for $1 billion of funding to meet these urgent needs.
There's going to be very strong support in the Congressional Jewish Caucus, maybe even unanimous, for significantly plussing up the nonprofit security funding. I'm interested, from your perspective, on issues that maybe are less unanimous amongst your organizations. So I'll give a few examples. One is the role of political leaders in condemning anti-Semitism within their own parties. Do your constituents feel like enough is being done in both parties? Democrats calling out Democrats for the anti-Zionist left providing a framework for this violence that we're seeing, and similarly Republicans calling out the Tucker Carlsons of the world for platforming Holocaust denial. That's one area. One would be on social media. I just joined a letter to the CEOs of the major social media platforms about their role in platforming extremist incitement and anti-Semitic content. On those two issues, and we can raise others, give me a sense of where you feel like your stakeholders are at, both on the relative importance of them and like what they would want to see.
Yeah, I think actually that is a consensus issue. I think that our stakeholders on both sides of the aisle are concerned with standing up to the rhetoric that's out there. Even in the confines of free speech, there's certainly rhetoric that is incitement to violence, and globalize the intifada as incitement to violence.
Just before 4 p.m., a group from the Gabby Giffords PAC came to Representative Auchincloss's office. The goal of the meeting was to keep Representative Auchincloss apprised on the latest movement around gun control legislation, to win his attention on some changes they were pursuing, and also to check in with him about what he was seeing and hearing in the halls of Congress.
The Trump administration, the DOJ in particular, entered into an agreement. They settled with this company that makes these things called force reset triggers. Now, force reset triggers are machine guns. The technology's been around since the 70s. ATF has regulated them like machine guns since the 1970s.
This is sort of in the same concept as the
Bump stocks?
yes.
So bump stocks are external devices, right? They replace the shoulder stock, and then they allow the user to basically apply a little bit of forward pressure and
finger,
slide back and forth into the finger. FRTs are internal devices. So force reset triggers are internal mechanics. They replace the trigger group from the standard AR-15. So there's no disconnect anymore. It has this weird thing called a locking bar, which basically replaces an autos here. They created the machine gun, but using different parts. And when you pull back on the trigger, what happens is the trigger itself forces itself to reset inside the device. It's not that you were releasing the trigger and holding the trigger again. The trigger resets. So when you pull the trigger and hold steady pressure, rapid, automatic fire. And now those are legal, which means that the people who had those seized or turned them into ATF are going to get them back. And now you're going to be able to start buying them again. And they've already started refining the technology. I've already seen a number of videos of like new FRTs coming out of the market. These things are going to start being sold in firearms sold from like the shelf.
And when I met with ATF last year, this was their biggest concern was not just the FRTs, the bump stocks, along with the
Stabilizing devices?
the little cheap devices. Thank you, Glock switches. The combination of these things that are making basically semi-automatic into automatic weapons.
Yeah. Glass switches is the big concern now because they're so ubiquitous.
They're so cheap.
Yeah, they're so cheap. Trying to just send them in front of the buttload, you can 3D print them
They find them a lot.
They're all
officers.
That's what they're saying.
Yeah.
But FRTs are legal now. So why would you risk a 10-year, $250,000 fine with the Glock switch when you could get yourself a much more powerful AR-15 pistol with a stabilizing brace and use it as a short-barreled rifle with a perfectly legal machine gun component that is no longer regulated like a machine gun.
The irony is, like, I've fired an AR-15 in its automatic setting, and it's not like it's not sportsmanship. You can't actually aim that well. It's not a particularly enjoyable experience. Like, it's not. I don't know who's doing this and for what.
It's got one purpose.
It's just.
So those things, I think, also as a veteran, right? We have a lot of concerns about some of the veteran bills that are moving, that are Second Amendment Protection Act, some of the Kennedy Amendment stuff that's going through markup. Really concerned about any kind of changes that ignores.
So tell me a little bit about like who those people are and what they want from you, like what the context of that meeting is.
So those are two very prominent gun safety organizations. Gun safety is one of my prime issues. Along with healthcare and drug pricing, and foreign policy issues. And so for issues that I think are really resonant for my district, that intersect with my own experience, that I'm working on legislatively in Congress, I want to do much more substantive check-ins with the policy experts. For issues that are secondary or that are not a prime focus for me, oftentimes my staff would take meetings with their staff. But for issues like gun safety, I want to hear it directly from their top people and what they're working on, things that I should be concerned about that are coming down the pike. Because there's always so much happening in this time that if you're not checking back in, you can miss things. Like I wouldn't have known about the forced reset trigger issue.
Right. Or what was happening at the state level.
Or what was happening with the state level against PLACA. So there's good news too, right?
Yeah.
This is the kind of stuff that like I have to go seek out. And I don't have the bandwidth to do it for 70 issues, right? But for gun safety, which is a defining issue for me, I do want to do it.
Well, it's interesting. I think like in my mind's eye, I imagine that meeting being like these people come in and they sit down, they tell you what they want you to do or how they want you to vote. But it struck me much more sort of like a brainstorm. Like they're here to get some information from you too, a little bit, like what the vibe is on certain bills and where people are. And
you're right that other meetings are not like that. So that's because we are such close allies ideologically. Like I'm very progressive on gun safety issues, and I'm very aligned with the Giffords and Brady and Everytown and other on their priorities. So it is more of a little bit like we're on the same side of the table brainstorming about how we can work.
Interesting. So in that meeting, they were here. It seemed like there was one core bill they were interested in talking to you about, and there was or a piece of legislation they were interested in talking about, and there was some ambiguity about what the parliamentarian was going to do. Can you explain what's going on there?
It's really astounding, only in Trump's Washington. So as part of this big, beautiful bill, the Medicaid cuts bill, they snuck in at the end, literally at the end, as a favor to one conservative Republican from Georgia who owns a gun store, a provision that repeals a $200 tax on buying silencers for pistols. It's been around for 100 years now. And they also added an element that basically just removes silencers from any regulation whatsoever. This was done to get his vote, it appears, and it's going to cost $1.5 billion taxpayer dollars to make it faster and cheaper to buy silencers for pistols. That makes it through the House fine because the House doesn't have a filibuster. In the Senate, for them to pass it without having to reach the 60 vote threshold, they have to do what's called a bird bath, which is basically saying, is it budgetary in nature? And so that's the reason the Republicans wrote the bill two different ways. They wrote it in a way that was budgetary in nature, where they just got rid of the tax credit, and the tax. And then they wrote it in a way that was regulatory in nature. And probably the one that's regulatory in nature won't make it through. But also maybe the Republicans just steamroll the parliamentarian because they don't care about rules anymore.
Just a few minutes after Auchincloss's allies in the gun control fight leave, someone very different enters his office, a very, very conservative House Republican. We're here in Representative Auchincloss's office. Tell me a little bit about why you guys are meeting today and what's sort of on your agenda. Pretend I'm not here for a minute.
Can I go first?
Sure, please.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think Jake Auchincloss is one of the very few thoughtful members of Congress. I mean, that's a little meaner than I mean it to be. There are actually a fair number of thoughtful people. They just don't get a lot of attention. And Jake is remarkable because he's never a jerk, at least not to me. And he's actually looking for the truth and how to get things done. And I've got lots of stories that would, I think, illustrate that. But that's why I'm here, because Jake's awesome.
You want to say something nice about Representative Johnson now?
He's in the majority. He doesn't get that in the majority. No, Dusty and I really became friends serving on the Select Committee on China together last term. And that committee is, I think, what Americans want Congress to be doing more of. So it was bipartisan. I think both parties sent thoughtful members to it. And it was oriented toward long-term strategic competition with China. And we really tried to dig into what are the things that America can do to outcompete China, and where Dusty and I really aligned, and feel free, Dusty, to jump in if I'm mischaracterizing, is I think both Dusty and I felt like the most important questions about America competing with China were not about China, they were about America. Are we going to invest in our own people? Are we going to conduct free trade with free people elsewhere in the world to strengthen our operating system of alliances? Are we going to uphold the rule of law and lean into what makes America great, which is individual freedom and the market economy, and not try to ape these sort of 5-year mercantilistic plans from the Chinese Communist Party? And so he and I think, aligned on that, probably coming from slightly different points of view and walks of life and obviously districts. And had a good time on that committee.
Oh, it was great. And clearly, economic populism is in the rise in both parties, and there's nothing inherently wrong about that. Like, let's have a legitimate conversation about what role should the government play in a market economy. That's not where Jake and I come to the party, though, right? We really, I think, are both very thoughtful and both very curious about free markets. Where are they weak, but where can they be strong? And when many in both of our parties just wanted more and more government involvement, we just said, hey, let's stop and let's think about this. And in fact, we filed a minority view in one of the major economic documents that the committee put out. And to Jake's point, it's a testament to the committee that was not viewed as some strike against the committee's work. This was, people appreciated the fact that we were thoughtfully adding to the work product of the committee.
So when you carve out time to come stop by here on a day like today in the middle of your day, 30 minutes, whatever it is the context of you guys getting together like we're from opposite sides, of the aisle. This doesn't happen enough, and we're just sort of checking in to see what's happening in each other's worlds, and maybe there's places that we can work on a piece of legislation together, or amend some bill that's about to get passed. I mean, like, is that kind of your thought process when you guys come together like this?
I think all of the incentives in the current political environment reward bad behavior. And I don't think my appearance in Tangled content is going to make it all that much easier for Jake to get reelected. It will probably make it harder. But if some small way I can try to make sure that the incentives are a little aligned, that people in Massachusetts understand how incredibly thoughtful and incredibly hardworking he is, I wouldn't be true to myself if I wasn't trying to contribute in that way.
Okay, so I understand that one of the issues you guys see eye to eye on and want to make some progress on is the fentanyl stuff, and some of the legislative ways we might be able to address it. I'll share just quickly. I grew up in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, 5-minute drive from Trenton. Representative Auchincloss and Representative Johnson sat down for more than 30 minutes discussing the issues they were partnering on, like fentanyl and China, and areas where they saw things very differently, like the performance of House Speaker Mike Johnson. We'll be releasing the full interview in a follow-up video. Do you have stated plans about what happens after the House for you?
No, I mean, I'm running for re-election, and I'm going to help frontline Democrats try to take back the House. It's the most important thing we can do in 26 is take back the House. Full stop.
I'm asking mostly from the angle of like the audience that you're trying to get to, I guess, is, when it's statewide, when it's national, when it's just like your district that matters.
It's anybody who's interested in politics and public policy and is at least receptive to the idea of Democrats governing, I want to try to reach.
You said something in the Giffords and Brady meeting about a litmus test that you have for the leadership pack.
Yeah. My leadership pack is dedicated. It's called Beyond Thoughts and Prayers, and it's dedicated to a gun safety majority in Congress. So we support two different kinds of candidates. We support candidates who are running in flippable seats. And there, just being a Democrat, not a Republican, is enough for me to know that it's going to create the math for a gun violence agenda.
Yeah.
But then I also will more rarely support a candidate who's not in a flippable seat, but is just has a really strong profile on the issue. And there, I'll look at the bills that they've supported. We want to see assault weapons ban, overturning this special immunity for the gun manufacturers. I think universal background checks is one of them.
Why that issue for you? It seems so defining.
I'm passionate about it. I'm a Marine officer. I've got 3 young children, and I know my district is squarely behind me on it, on the imperative for national gun safety laws. The gun violence majority in Congress is also the kind of Congress that certifies an election that's free and fair, right? It's also the kind of Congress that can pass other sensible legislation. So I'm a very proud American, but on the issue of gun safety, I find myself just continuously astounded and ashamed of American policy. Republicans are putting on the floor a divisive one on the Boulder attacks. And there's also a bill that for me is challenging about basically protectionism for shipping.
What's the Boulder attack bill?
So there's 2 ones about the Boulder attack. One is a very broad bipartisan condemnation of anti-Semitism and the terrorist attack, which everyone's going to vote for, or I should hope everyone's going to vote for. The second one is has some more inflammatory and divisive language in it, in the what's called the whereas clauses. So there's, as for a congressional resolution, there's whereas clauses, which basically are the findings of fact, and then there's the resolve clauses, which are, and here's what Congress thinks about that. And the whereas clauses, and the Republicans have been doing this on Israel and anti-Semitism for 3 years now. They just put in things that are divisive.
Do you know what you're going to do right now as you sit here?
I am going to have some conversations on the House floor. with some members that I respect on these issues, on the anti-Semitism and Israel ones.
I'm curious, like going to a vote like this right now, do you still kind of feel the weight of it? You've been in Congress for a few years now. Is it like, does it feel big and important to you, even on just like a random Monday night like this?
It does. It does. And what I'm always thinking in my head is, can I explain this back home in living rooms? That is the key. It's the question in my mind is not, is this going to anger some people? Every single day I vote on things, and
Yeah.
somewhere between 40 to 50% of people are going to disagree with me. It's, can I go back to my district and can I sit in living rooms and explain this to folks? And that's what I need to, on this, to go talk to, representatives from Colorado, go talk to Jewish members of Congress who have been working a lot on issues like this.
Yeah.
And figure out, okay, can I go home and explain this?
Where are we headed?
We are headed to the House floor in the Capitol complex.
Where you're going to cut us off. We can't bring the cameras in.
Can't bring the cameras in, can't be mic'd up, but that is where all the members come together for our votes. And we're a lot of sort of like the informal conversations that drive policy end up happening.
Yeah.
Right? Like, the two sides are literally on separate sides of the aisle. But I spent a lot of time crossing the aisle, right? I spent a lot of time talking to Democrats too, but I spent a lot of time crossing the aisle and trying to figure out, hey, where's committee heading on this issue, or who can I work with on this? Because in such a closely divided Congress, if you're not trying to find willing Republicans on policy items, it's very challenging to get things passed.
Yeah. So you're going to go in now. Doors will close. You'll go in. First thing you do is you're going to find a few of the members that you want to talk to about this specific.
So I actually got another bill I'm going to be talking to members about as well, which is this cargo preference bill. It's a bill that says that 100% of federal cargo used to be put on U.S. ships, U.S. flag ships, which it's a protectionist measure, and there's arguments that it's good for U.S. shipbuilding. There's also arguments that it's going to raise prices for people and make it harder to build infrastructure. I should wait for him on. I tend to find the arguments that it's going to raise prices more compelling. And I think the last thing people want right now is higher prices. So
Yeah.
or slower build outs for infrastructure.
So thinking a push against that bill?
Yes, but I'm going to give someone on the floor an opportunity to argue against it before I vote.
Interesting.
Because it's going to be a vote that will put me in a pretty firm minority, I think, probably on the floor. And so in those situations, I always seek out extra hard for a steel man. Yeah, I think I'm not going to be.
All right. Well, you see Mike here? Thanks for the walk. Good luck. Be curious to hear how things go when you get back. All right. Immediately after returning from the vote, Representative Auchincloss joined a virtual town hall with his constituents.
Do you agree that criminals at a protest should be arrested and removed from the protest so that the people who actually do have, I'll call it a legitimate case to make, but are not committing a crime, are the only ones there in effect?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think that's a particularly controversial point of view. At least I would hope it's not. You break the law, whether through violence against another person or destruction of property, whether it's federal property or private property, you get arrested, you go to jail. My consternation is that California has a police force. They have LAPD, they've got California state troopers who the governor has indicated are wholly resourced with both the authorities and...
Thank you for holding this space. I'm a professor of Latin American history, so I've seen this picture before. And my question to both of you is, thinking a little bit long term, it seems that now, because of the chaos coming out of the White House, you're putting out fires, but I'm sure that you're thinking long term, at least, in the next 3 months, or at least the rest of the year, or through the midterms for next year. And I wonder if you can walk us through a little bit of that big picture of what is your goal besides, holding as much as possible and holding?
Thank you. Hi, my name is Christopher Basampieri. I'm the Legislative Political Director for the National Association of Letter Carriers, Local 18, representing 1,260 members. And a question we have here is one thing is vote by mail and privatization of the post office is obviously a threat. We're very happy that you did send in Stephen Lynch's bill, HR 70, recently, so thank you. One last thing too is HR 1065, which is Protect Our Letter Carriers Act. Right now, we're being robbed at gunpoint of our arrow keys. There's been robberies happening throughout the district, Medford, and different areas constantly. 5 people have been murdered for the arrow keys. So we're wondering if we can count on your signature to co-sponsor this to protect us.
I appreciate your work. And we'll continue to be steadfastly opposed to efforts to privatize the U.S. Postal Service, just like I'll be opposed to efforts to privatize Social Security, both of which this administration is trying. And we've beaten them back, actually, on both to date. I will look at the legislation that you just described. I am aware of the threats to the physical safety of postal carriers. Take that seriously, and I'll look at that legislation. From the professor. I'll speak briefly, and then I want to let Justin talk about maybe some of Protect Democracy's longer-term initiatives. Briefly, I'll outline 3 things. The first is we really need to pull the debt limit out of this out of this one big beautiful bill. So many of you will have noticed that the House passed what he's calling the one big beautiful bill. It's Medicaid cuts and tax cuts for rich people. And stuffed into that is...
Are you tired yet?
Got a little bit more work to do, but all right, those are intense. Yeah.
Yeah. Before you get out of here, I'm curious. I mean, first of all, what's like for you? How do you feel about the value of those? It's funny listening to it. It's like you can tell there are these moments where some of the constituents are just kind of letting some steam off.
Yep.
And other moments where they're sort of there playing by their ground rules you guys are setting. I mean, I feel like some of that stuff has to be a little frustrating, or,
I don't know if that necessarily applies to politics. I think every single Zoom call that everybody has been on in the last 5 years is modestly frustrating at times.
Yeah.
So I think that it's just that dynamic writ to 500 people. But in general, I think they're a great use of time. What we do them telephone town halls, we do Zoom town halls, we do in-person town halls, we do mail surveys. Just never miss an opportunity to talk to your constituents.
That was the first one we maxed out on.
In terms of
We hit the
people in the room.
I hope we gave people what they were seeking.
I mean, just by the interest, we haven't hit the full 500 before.
Well, and there was very little drop off. One of the things I watch is how much drop off there is. We had 500 to start with, and it went to 475, which is very little drop off for an hour.
All right, what happened at the vote? The last time we saw you disappear into a mysterious elevator.
I voted, I was one of the very few members to vote against this protectionist maritime measure. So I think it's going to raise prices. I don't think actually I know it's going to raise prices for both consumer goods and infrastructure. And I don't think it's actually going to help shipbuilding. I voted for both measures to condemn the anti-Semitic attacks in Boulder.
So before you left, you were looking at this language.
Yep.
It seemed like one of them was like a pretty uncontroversial. It looked like
one of them was a slam dunk.
Horseshoe theory. I think it was only Marjorie Taylor Greene and one of the progressive caucus liberals who voted against or abstained from voting for it. Maybe Rashida Tlaib.
Bad vote.
Yeah, and then, but 113 Democrats voted against the one that you were kind of worried about. And there's some language in it, I guess, that you showed me right before you left. It's like seemed like litmus test language about.
Yeah, they had fixed the worst of it, but it was basically this statement about vetting, the need to vet visas for anti-Semitic or anti-American activity, which, as we were saying, like in the broad conception, yes, of course, when you're looking at someone's visa application, you want to make sure that they're going to be consonant with the American way of life, but who's deciding what's anti-American, right? Because we have seen, I certainly have no confidence in this administration to dictate that. And, we prize a diversity of viewpoints, including, criticizing the government.
So what changed your mind how'd you get to the yes?
Because it's always easy to vote against things for something that's in there. I try to apply the living room test. Can I go back home and I represent 100,000 Jews who are afraid right now and explain why I voted against a resolution condemning anti-Semitism and anti-Semitic violence because I didn't like one of the clauses rubbed me the wrong way? I don't think that cuts it.
So what are you doing to wrap up your day here? What are your last things you have to get done before you get out?
I aim for inbox zero at the end of a day, particularly at the beginning of a legislative week, because I'm a decision maker. I'm a critical part of the feedback loop to other members and to my staff, and so I don't like to keep things bottlenecked. So I'm going to try to get to my inbox.
Wow. I haven't seen inbox zero in 10 years, man.
Well, I mean, you read a newsletter.
Yeah.
Or respond to it. So
that's true. So we're here. We just got out of Representative Jake Auchincloss's office. As you can tell, it's basically nighttime, 8:30. He's still in his office wrapping up. He said he goes to inbox zero. I respect that. I've never been there, but that's what he's shooting for. And it's quiet here in DC. Big, messy day of politics. All the craziness going on with the stuff in LA. These votes on bills having to do with anti-Semitism. The news looks insane. And then we're here right outside the Capitol building at 8:30 at night. And it's basically just quiet, suburban, quiet DC in the middle of the city. So it's definitely an interesting kind of dichotomy from what you see on the news. And also a reminder of just like how many real people are here just doing work every day, including Representative Auchincloss, who still has not left the building. So this is life in DC for a member of Congress.
Yes. Yeah. Do you remember that?
The next morning, we met Representative Auchincloss at the Vote Vets headquarters in a residential building in Washington, D.C. Vote Vets is an interest group that backs issues and candidates involving military veterans. Auchincloss himself is a former Marine. The meeting with Vote Vets was ostensibly about military veterans that the group was considering backing to run for public office and what the messaging focus for Democrats should be.
one of the things, so we've talked about what people don't like about what Trump is doing, which I think it's increasingly clear. And then this is even before the Medicaid cuts start to come home, right, which are going to be deeply unpopular. They've touched a hot stove on that one. When people think about, all right, well, what are Democrats, what are they going to be for? Which I think is really to your point about like, people are wondering how we win again. And to me, we're not going to win again until we tell people what we want to do in office. I think I was telling you this, Matt, and I forget, but I was talking to a frontline Democrat who was describing a national sort of a qualitative survey of voters, and they did the free association word clouds, and they were like, all right, so what do you think Trump is like? What's the first words that come to mind when you think about what Trump is working on? And it was economy, immigration, and tariffs. And people didn't, as we just said, people don't actually necessarily agree with what he is doing on those three subjects, but that's where they think his head is at. And they said, all right, what are Democrats focused on? And it was just one word, it was just Trump. And so, and they agree with what we're doing about that, right? But here's the challenge is that like if all people think about is that Democrats hate Trump, even if they agree that they want us fighting Trump, that's not enough for us to earn back their trust to govern. It's like, what are we going to be for? Are you getting a sense in these events, Cedar Rapids, or through survey or through polling or anything like that, about what's landing with people? Is that a proactive strategy?
I'm gonna let you speak to this more also, but I would say, and I guess you chat with candidates more in depthly before that launch. I usually just coming at the end to help with us, but like, it seems like the thing that everyone wants to make their message this cycle as a Democrat is we're going to end corruption. I mean, and also still the economy, you know, but I mean, even, you know, we'll get to we just had a corruption prosecutor announced yesterday in Pennsylvania. I saw it was a great strike. Yeah, it was great. So, and there are a couple more of those types of candidates that are pursuing wild suit to, PSAP. Yeah, PSAP. Mm-hmm. We've got at least
2 or 3 more prosecutors coming online that kind of fit a little bit of that same mold. And so they feel almost pulled into the race.
Was it Will Rollins a prosecutor?
Yeah, he was.
Can we get to run again, or is he just?
I hit $1 for every time I hurt. I think she was 2 races. Yeah. He's hard. Yeah. But it's like Jeff Bezos was in that ad. Mark Zuckerberg was in that ad. Obviously, we've had candidates use Elon with the chainsaw. Like this idea of like big tech, big corporations, big Republican donors getting rich and controlling our lives, and you're still not getting ahead. How do we break up these monopolies? Sort of that like economic populism. I think that's going to be a big theme of like Democratic proactive messaging in this Congress.
And yet, can we focus it on the social media corporations? Because they're the ones who have the most corporate capture of Washington, and I think are doing the most damage to the American way of life right now, and have the most, I think, hold on the Republicans. And yet I have a series of really tough bills on social media. And it's hard getting members of Congress on these bills. The Democratic Party, if they want to campaign on taking on big tech, they better govern on it. And I'm frustrated with particularly the left of the party and its ability to take on social media corporations.
Yeah, can we go
audio only or video only?
Video only for this part?
Sure.
Awesome.
Toward the end of the meeting, VoteVets representatives and Auchincloss asked us to turn off our audio recording so they could discuss some candidates in more candid terms off the record.
But now, like, social media corporations they're big.
All right, thanks guys, appreciate it. Towards the end of the meeting, you guys went off the record with us and talked a little bit about just like the state of some
specific races
heading into 2026, primaries, candidates you're keeping an eye on. What was like maybe a takeaway for you that you could share about?
Yeah.
It's not, I heard you say like, this is like the first real cycle update I've gotten.
It is.
So I'm curious what you're hearing.
So last cycle, through my leadership pact, Beyond Thoughts and Prayers, I gave about $1 million to frontline Democrats. And I'll be surging resources again this cycle, and I want to do it in a way that's the most impactful. And it's just different in a presidential race than it is in a midterms, right? So I'm relearning the map now. The specific question I'm trying to get the answer to right now, early in this cycle, is where does it make the most sense for me to contribute early to be? Ultimately, I'll probably give to all of these candidates who are in legitimate battleground seats to try to take back the House. So the question I'm asking now is, where should I be supporting candidates early because it has outsized impact to be early?
Later that morning, Auchincloss went to an energy hearing to question Trump's energy secretary, Chris Wright. He sat next to Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez during the hearing and came prepared to question Wright about his perceived contradictions on the position the Trump administration was taking on renewable energies like offshore wind.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Secretary, welcome. We appreciate your testimony today.
You've spoken a lot about the power of markets to deliver energy dominance for the United States. I agree. I believe in markets. I think they work well, and they are the key for us to control our own energy destiny as a country. Would you agree that one of the roles of government in making markets work better is to establish technology-neutral policy with clear, consistent, predictable regulation?
Yeah, clear, consistent regulation is very helpful for industry.
And technology-neutral?
It depends what you mean by that word.
Well, the reason I ask is I represent Massachusetts, which had a number of projects in the works for offshore wind, and I understand a lot of my colleagues don't think offshore wind is going to work. I understand some investors don't think offshore wind is going to work. Shouldn't markets be able to decide that for themselves? Like if they are able to put steel in the water and deliver power reliably, why should the federal government cancel that?
I think I understand where you're coming from, Representative. It's a complicated question. And
do you agree with what Secretary Burgum has done, where she's functionally issued a moratorium against offshore wind, including for states and developers that are willing to take on the risk and see if it can deliver?
The question is, who's willing to take on the risk? The history of offshore wind, first in Europe and here, has been a train wreck. It's meant higher electricity prices and less stable grids.
Right, and state governments and private developers are well able to see the same track record that you're able to see. They are proposing to innovate and develop and take risks, just like geothermal or nuclear. And I'm not a technology expert for clean energy. I don't know if it's going to work. What I do know is I don't understand why one bureaucrat in Washington, D.C. should be able to say yes or no, especially when you're pointing out, rightfully, that investors are not going to want to put billions of dollars down on the table over decadal time spans if a new administration comes in and rips up the contracts, right? I mean, does this send a good signal to energy investors that they can put hundreds of millions of dollars down and it gets thrown out overnight?
It's a challenging issue of what the right thing to do with wind power. There's also a lot of public outrage just because the footprint, the visual footprint and the footprint of waters is large. And so there's a growing movement.
Let's be candid.
Rural people.
The outrage is because there were offshore wind farms off the coast of Scotland and the president's golf course. That's why he's mad about it. And people who want to invest in new clean energy sources should not have to worry about whether the next president does or does not like turbines off of his golf course. Let's talk about another issue, an issue where we may see more eye to eye, which is geothermal and nuclear. Strong supporter of both. I think they're critical. And you've already talked about the loan program office's really vital role in potentially.
What's that process like for you? Yeah. And what are you doing during the hearing? Are you like half paying attention, half getting some work done, trying to like pick your spots, listening to what the energy secretary is saying? Like, how are you thinking about that?
I think the pick your spots, tune in, tune out is the right analogy for that, which is it's a long hearing. I've read a lot of the pre-briefings. I know my staff has prepared me with sort of the lay of the land in terms of his policy positions, our policy positions. So I have a pretty strong sense of what he's going to be out of the gate talking about. I have a pretty strong sense of what both Republicans and Democrats are going to be pressing him on. So I'm like, with one ear, I'm listening in to, all right, so what are his answers on nuclear? What are his answers on geothermal? What are his answers on the loan program office? What are his answers on the reconciliation bill? So that I'm not being redundant. And you saw that I changed some of my questions that you and I had talked about earlier. I said, okay, he's talked a lot about the LPO. He's talked a lot about nuclear. I'm actually going to pivot my questions because I'm hearing what other people are asking about, and he's putting his answers on the record already. And so I pivoted a little bit towards offshore wind. It's a big issue for my home state. And I think it really contravenes his own statements about he's a all of the above pro-market energy guy. Like, no, they're not. They're oil and gas, and they want to cancel everything else. And I think it's important to draw into sharp relief that disjunction. And you can tell that he didn't have really good answers about offshore wind.
Right.
Because the truth is, the president has a golf course in Scotland that has offshore wind turbines that he hates, and that's why they're doing it. And Chris Wright's a smart guy, but I don't care how smart you are, you can't defend Donald Trump's idiocy.
Yeah.
I'm doing a day in the life.
How's the day going?
Ask them, the ones who have to leave.
It's interesting. It was really day two. We're like 24 hours in. We started yesterday. You guys work harder than I thought, man.
Oh, that's good. I'm glad that story's getting told. We do.
No, it's been good.
You're at it home.
Interesting, yeah. So how'd you feel like that went for you, just this hearing?
For this one, I think it went fine. Because I think what you saw from Secretary Wright is that he couldn't defend the inconsistencies.
Yeah.
And I also got him on the record as supporting nuclear and geothermal, which is important to continue to get them on the record on that so that we can get changes in the reconciliation bill.
Right.
So I think that was a success. I think it was a pretty good back and forth of like a assertive but not rude conversation, which is what I'm aiming for.
Seem to appreciate and empathize with the position you're in with some of like talking about what's happening in Massachusetts and
The thing is that for Wright, unlike Kennedy at HHS or Hegseth at Defense, Wright's actually a smart guy who actually knows energy. Right? I mean, Hegseth has no clue about defense. Kennedy has no clue about healthcare. But Wright actually knows energy, and so he understands the point I'm making, which is you guys are claiming that you want to turbocharge nuclear and geothermal, and yet you're undercutting precisely the public sector tools that you yourself have said are necessary to do that. And he gets that inconsistency.
So what's this vote you're going to now?
I'm voting on a Washington, D.C. bill that's trying to overturn DC's allowing non-citizens to vote in local elections. So as you know, Congress has unusual amounts of control of the District of Columbia. We can never vote on this for a state, but Congress technically governs the District of Columbia, basically. And so the Republicans are always using the DC as like a punching bag of their own national issues. And DC passed a bill that allowed non-citizens to vote in local elections.
Do you support that bill?
So if I were a DC city councilor, I would not support that. I would not support non-citizens voting in local elections. But I'm not a DC city councilor. I'm a member of Congress. My focus should be on national issues, and the District of Columbia should be allowed to govern itself, just like states are. And there's lots of different states that allow various amounts of, have expanded the envelope of the franchise for different levels, and they're allowed to do that. States run elections. So to me, it's a DC governance issue, not a voting issue.
So you'll vote against the bill to allow DC to manage their elections how they want, basically?
I'll vote against the bill basically saying DC should be allowed to manage its own elections. And in the past, I've put out statements being like, I think the previous statements have been on crime, not about voting, but same principle, being like, hey, if I were a DC city councilor, I wouldn't have voted for this. I'm not a DC city councilor. They can run them and govern themselves.
Got it. All right, good luck.
Thanks, Steve.
We met back up with Auchincloss on his way to the office, where he got organized for the rest of the afternoon's meetings and clued us in on one strategy he uses to build relationships in Congress.
One important lesson I've taken from Congress is the impact of handwritten notes. There's so much noise in politics, and there's so many politicians just talking, that a handwritten note to a colleague cuts through it. And frankly, when I get out of politics, it's going to be a lesson I take with me. Like, getting a handwritten note from somebody is such a special feeling. And I try to, I had said before to Isaac, like, I try to sweat every day and write every day. Mm-hmm. And I try to write a handwritten note every day to somebody. I don't succeed, but
that is something that you've done prior to your time?
No, it was something I learned in Congress.
Yes. Was that, did a colleague recommend that to you, or did you pick that up from somebody?
No, no, that's not true. A colleague did recommend it to me. Lauren Underwood. Mm-hmm. It wasn't so much that she recommended it to me. She was describing her approach to things, and she was just reflecting on the fact that, like, there's so many things that you can't control in this line of work of, do people agree with your policy proposal? Are you going to be able to make this issue a priority? Are you able to, communicate in the way you want to on this issue? She's like, but you know what I can control? I can say thank you. Mm-hmm. I can say thank you in writing to people. Mm-hmm. Just take a little bit of time to do it. It was such a good, it's like, yeah, you totally can control that. It doesn't take that much time, and it really matters. So I think about this too, because I have 3 little kids. I'm like, the things that you try to impart to your kids, right, is the importance of writing notes.
Can you share who this is to?
This is to Dusty Johnson. Okay. So the gentleman who came yesterday, took time out of his schedule. Yeah. And doing it across party lines. Yeah. Saying things.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So nice. So you've got the Mass Senior Care Association next. Yeah. What's that going to focus on?
They're going to be very dialed in, I expect, to Medicaid cuts.
Yeah.
Next, Auchincloss met with representatives from the Massachusetts Senior Care Association, which advocates on behalf of healthcare providers, residents, and consumers. The meeting came as Congress was considering President Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill, and as the White House was ramping up its deportation efforts.
So I know that one thing that's going to be top of mind is the Medicaid cuts. Yeah. I don't agree with them.
Thank you.
We had a 27-hour hearing in Energy and Commerce where we brawled with the Republicans about this issue. Their claim is that this is all about basically illegal immigrants and waste, fraud, and abuse. That claim doesn't scrub, as you all know better than me. What this is going to do is going to, one, kick hundreds of thousands of people in my district and millions of people throughout the country off of Medicaid. It's going to increase the cost of healthcare overall, because people are going to be getting uncompensated care through emergency rooms, other more expensive sites of care. Absolutely. And it's going to raise health insurance premiums for people. So it's a terrible bill. And that's even before you comprehend that it's all done in service for tax cuts for people who don't even need the tax cuts. So it's a complete dumpster fire of legislation. I don't expect, I'm sure that you're oriented towards the Senate. I'll dim your hopes a little bit. I don't think the Senate's going to materially change the Medicaid portion of this. I really don't. I know that there's chatter about that. You see in Josh Hawley and others. Fundamentally, these congressional Republicans, they huff and they puff, and then Donald Trump just blows them down, right? So they may get, you may see some interior decorating of this bill, but you're not going to see a renovation.
So that's incredibly discouraging to us. I think I want to start by saying thank you to you, of course, and your advocacy and leadership. But we are here in Washington visiting with the delegation and even sort of our colleagues outside of Massachusetts with urgency and vulnerability.
That's where we need the efforts is we need your colleagues in Kentucky and Louisiana and Idaho, where their senators or House members are influential in the health policy formation of this bill, making plain, one, the real ramifications to health access, and two, just how politically unpopular this is going to be. Right. These are voters. People getting at-home care, people getting care. These facilities are high propensity voters. This is a hot stove that the Republicans are touching, and it needs to be brought home to them before they do real damage. So I hope you prove me wrong.
I just walking the hallways and I'm very discouraged by what I am hearing when I bump into my colleagues, and I suspect that your instinct may in fact be right.
I mean, I spent 27 hours hearing their best arguments for this. It is waste, fraud, and abuse. They're protecting Medicaid from waste, fraud, and abuse. I don't think people think that at-home care for kids with intellectual disabilities is wasteful, but that's basically their core argument. And second is they always do this. Every time they get into a tight situation, they always just try to find a way to make it about immigration. It's been their number one issue for years now. You're seeing him do this right now in LA, right? Try to pick a fight on immigration when voter approval of his handling of the economy is going down. And it's the same thing with this. They know that cutting healthcare is not popular. And so what they're making, and I've seen the Republican talk, I've literally seen the sheets, the GOP talking point sheets. And it's just, keep it simple. This is about preventing illegals from having healthcare. Okay. So we know their best arguments. I don't think it's going to work with the American people. I really don't. I mean, they may push through this bill. And this is something I'm interested in hearing your point of view on, is we're going to get to the other side of this. And what I don't want Democrats to do is to come back and say, our response is to restore the status quo in healthcare. Because people don't like the status quo in healthcare, right? I think we should come back out with a pretty bold plan on actually expanding and strengthening Medicaid, right? Like, do some jujitsu. They're making this core mistake of thinking that Medicaid is unpopular. They're wrong. Medicaid is super popular. And I think we can come back out and be like, actually, you guys are saying you're going to cut Medicaid. We're actually going to make Medicaid the basis of universal basic insurance. And it's not Massachusetts that they're really worried about. They know that our delegation is against these Medicaid cuts. They're working with their colleagues in other states to bring home to the Republicans what this means for them back home.
Yeah. After a day of hearings and meetings, Representative Auchincloss attended a vigil on the Capitol steps for a pair of Israeli embassy workers who were murdered in Washington, D.C. The vigil was led by Republican House Speaker Mike Johnson and attended by a bipartisan contingent of members of Congress.
Well, we want to thank you all for joining us this evening. We gather tonight to honor the memory of two precious souls, Sarah Milgram and Yaron Lashinsky. They led honorable lives of advocacy at the Israeli embassy, and they devoted themselves to peace in the land that they so loved. The monster who murdered them was not motivated by peace, but something very different. He went to a Jewish museum to hunt down Jewish people. And we want to be crystal clear tonight. This is targeted anti-Semitic terrorism. There are no shades of gray, and there is no other way to describe it. In Colorado and in our capital city, we see two cold-blooded monsters separated by 2,000 miles, but united in their sick hatred of the Jewish people. it just defies understanding.
Thank you, Speaker Johnson, to all of my colleagues in Congress, to my good friend and former colleague AJC leader Ted Deutsch, and all those who have joined us to honor the lives of two innocent young people taken from us prematurely by an act of domestic terrorism. Sarah and Yaron were a beautiful couple, murdered in cold blood. Anti-Semitism has been a painful reality of Jewish life throughout the world for thousands of years. We must come together in good faith as Democrats and Republicans, standing shoulder to shoulder to defeat anti-Semitism whenever and wherever it may be found.
The head of the AJC, Ted Deutsch, put it best when he said, if you only see anti-Semitism where it's convenient, you don't see it at all. Anti-Semitism is on the hard left. When I was in Poland, was the narrow anti-Zionism usually. Anti-Semitism is on the hard right. You got Tucker Carlson's Holocaust deniers. It needs to be identified and condemned wherever it emerges. And it's critical that it be done by party leaders who happen in their own party. And that's why this event is so important. To have Hakeem and Mike Johnson together, members from both parties behind them, are making clear that there's bipartisan commitment to stamp out anti-Semitism.
After the vigil, Representative Auchincloss went back to his office to finish drafting his latest piece for his Substack and review some materials his staff had prepared for the next day. He had an early cable news interview the next morning that we'd be accompanying him to, so we headed back to our hotel to get some rest.
Good morning. Coming to you from the nation's capital. It is just before 5 a.m. here in Washington, D.C. We got up about an hour ago, did a little bit of prep for this morning. Now we're over near where Congressman Auchincloss is going to be picked up by his communications director. We're going to head over to the MSNBC studio with him, hear a little bit about the prep he does before a cable hit like this early in the morning, and then see him as he goes into the studio. So this is going to be a really early start for the Congressman. We're right there with him. We're going to see exactly what it's like as he's going through this morning routine, and then we'll send him off on his day.
I'll get it in here. So she was really interested in that.
Yeah, I like her.
Yeah, she's great. And
We're talking about LA.
yes, exactly. How they're doing ICE's facilitating mass arrests after the curfew in LA that's going to last until 6 a.m. for the next few days. So because that orders to federalize the National Guard be issued through the governors, because that's what the section he is instituting it hinges on, that the president cannot take this action against the wishes of the governor. And the plain language of the statute that they're using does not have that explicit requirement of the governor's consent. So
I understand. Yeah. And this is what I said in what I wrote earlier this week too, is that there is some ambiguity there, and in my view, under the 10th Amendment, the tie goes to the states. If there's ambiguity about a law enforcement power, what Madison said in the 10th Amendment is, if the power is not expressly delegated to the federal government, then it's reserved for the states or for the people. I think Newsom's going to win that case.
So one of the things he was saying is that he basically, his speech was centered around how democracy is under assault, that he's pulling a military dragnet across Los Angeles. And the most important thing to note is that California may be first, but it certainly won't end here. So that's the point that he made.
And the order makes that clear. The order gives Trump power to do it anywhere in the country for any personnel.
Exactly.
So then the question is, do we emphasize the Marine element or do we emphasize the legal element?
So they're going to obviously reference your service and 29 Palms. So I think it starts there, and then you can get into the legal argument of posse comitatus. I think it's also worth noting with the recent RFK news, MSNBC has done quite a bit on Bill Cassidy and his kind of rationale for voting to confirm RFK, being that
his rationale is that he has a primary.
The rationale also being that he has given him his word essentially that he wouldn't dismantle the vaccine advisory board, which he now moved to do. So you can make those points there as well.
With these interviews, the key is not to try to have answers memorized, because then you come across like a robot. The key is to know the general direction that you want to take an answer. It's the general type of question you're going to get, but then make it conversational. And that's a very hard balance to strike, because you want to be articulate, which means you have to have some sense of the full answer, but also don't want to sound rehearsed. And that is a very it's a craft that has to be honed.
Are you also thinking about what network you're going to be on? Does that affect at all how you approach some of these responses?
It does, and more also the actual anchor that I'm talking to, and also the format. So it's different when it's virtual versus in person. It's a very different dynamic. Yeah. When it's virtual, it's more turn taking because you don't have the physical cues.
Right.
And so those are more like, that's even more challenging to have an authentic interaction, or because it's mediated over Zoom. Whereas in person, you tend to have the conversations veer off more organically, which is better. I think that's a better dynamic. Yeah. But it means also less predictable.
We weren't able to film inside the studio, so we waited outside while Auchincloss did the hit. We took the opportunity to catch some of the sights and sounds of Washington, D.C. waking up.
Of a parade that we were talking about at the very start of the segment that's going to be happening here in Washington, D.C., that happens to coincide with the president's birthday, but is actually for the 250th anniversary of the U.S. Army. It feels, and we started the show talking about this, like this week is meant to project the optics of Trump as someone who has the military at his fingertips, because he is, of course, commander-in-chief.
It's an expensive birthday party for an overgrown toddler. And it's an irony that I'm sure is lost on him, but the United States Army was born out of the Continental Army under George Washington. And one of the reasons that George Washington is such an important founding father for us is that he actually refused to use the military for political ends. His officers came to him in 1783 and said, "We want you to usurp the Confederation Congress. We're sick of them." People hated Congress then, too. And he said no.
Some things don't change.
In the Newburgh Address, he said, "I won't do it. I respect civilian authority over the military." One of the great moments in the history of Western democracy, and this president, who of course doesn't understand that history, is trampling upon that tradition.
Tell me.
I thought it went well. He did a lot of posse comitatus, breaking that down, what that means, and also told you that his service at 29 Palms.
Yeah, the goal was to both address rule of law and my own Marine service. I think when you can get the intersection between personal experience with current events with policy, that sort of that Venn diagram right in the center is, I think, the most resonant way to do a conversation. And there are times when we'll just say no to requests because we don't feel like it fits in that area, like it's outside the strike zone. But here, I know how much my constituents care about rule of law issues. They consistently tell me it's their number one issue, their number one concern. This is their nightmare scenario. And there's every reason to believe that Boston could be one of the cities targeted by this kind of violation of posse comitatus. And so I'm confident my constituents want to see me addressing this forcefully on a national stage, and I'm confident that I'm a strong messenger on it because of my background. Because I just know that these Marines are not, one, I know that they don't want to do this. They were supposed to be on leave with their families, and now they're being deployed here. And two, they're not trained appropriately to do this. They're trained to go kick the shit out of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps. What are you on to now?
Okay.
Are we walking back?
Yeah.
We're going to walk back and think gin, and then I got a couple committee hearings. Great.
After the interview wrapped up, we walked with Auchincloss to the Capitol as he prepared to start his day in earnest.
AI and power. Yeah, I'm probably going to try to pivot that into railing against the social media corporations.
Wait, you want to talk about
social media corporations are the worst organizations in the world today in the corporate sphere. And neither party has been willing to take them on. And I think there's a huge both policy and political lane there of just willing to fight back against social media platforms that are attention fracking our children and corroding our civil discourse and have no duty of care for truth-seeking and for particularly protecting children online.
Has having kids influenced the way you feel about it? Yeah.
5, 3, and 2, and my wife and I are like, we feel like we've got like 3 to 4 years before our son already asked for a smartphone,
right.
Which makes me feel like I've got 3 to 4 years to legislate on this issue.
Yeah. Do you find that when you do go on to TikTok, particularly?
I don't have TikTok,
but as for an interview.
Oh yeah.
Do you find though that it's actually can be an effective communication strategy? Like, do you find the reach is there and a benefit?
Oh, there's massive opportunity
cost
for not going on TikTok.
Yeah.
Massive opportunity cost for not being on TikTok.
Yeah.
I just can't square it with my opposition to TikTok being Chinese communist owned and controlled, but it is by far the most effective. We're gonna go this way. By far the most effective medium.
Is it frustrating that Congress has taken action on this, and
which is one of many laws he's breaking?
Right, and I think there's now discussion of another extension in the works.
Because functionally, I mean, let's just be real here. He views this as another transaction for Trump Incorporated. Right. Like, he's not going to do this deal unless he understands how his family benefits from it. Right. And he hasn't figured that out yet.
Yeah.
Probably because his sons are, I'm sure, trying to create some consortium through his meme coin to buy it. Mm-hmm. And they're too incompetent to figure it out, so he can't sell it. But make no mistake, the meme coin and the TikTok are intertwined here.
Yeah.
He's trying to figure out how he can get people to buy his meme coin in exchange for him selling TikTok to the right buyer.
Yeah.
Congressman, we're sending you on your day. Thanks for all the time. Is this the last thing? This will be the last thing for us?
Oh,
yeah.
Okay. Hey. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Guys, it's been a pleasure for the last couple of days.
We'll keep you in the loop about timing and everything, but
what was your walk count? Did you see how many steps you got in?
No idea, but I can feel it internally. I've burned a lot.
Yesterday.
That's good.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. It's Congress is a contact sport.
Yeah.
So good for it. All right, guys, gentlemen, be well.
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
After nearly 72 hours shadowing Representative Jake Auchincloss and his team, we finally turned the cameras off to pack up and head on our way. For us, it was a whirlwind schedule jam-packed with votes, hearings, constituent interactions, TV hits, staff meetings, and strategizing. But for Representative Auchincloss, his team, and other representatives like him, it was just another day in the life of a member of Congress. If you're interested in more videos like this one, or the extras that we cut from this video, please be sure to subscribe to this channel. We're going to be releasing all of that and more in future videos, and as always, we'll be producing content like this on the Tangle News YouTube channel.